pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Fellow board members, welcome. John, welcome. Members of the press, welcome. So just as a description of how this meeting is going to be laid out, we're going to do a little bit of business in open session, just to get through a couple business items that we have to get through. We're going to go into closed session with John as we begin to look at our replacement for our superintendent's position. Timing, John, hour and a half or more?
We say it can go up to 2 hours. I've done this in as little as about 40 and as much as 2 hours. It's likely to be somewhere in between.
Okay, so what I want to tell the media and anybody else who may come in is that we're going to be in closed session for some time. Then we're going to come out of closed session, back into open, continue conversation, as well as go into audience participation, if there is any, and work our way towards the close of the meeting. So just want everyone to know that there's going to be a bit of a gap as we're in closed session. All right. Mary, would you do attendance, please?
Yes, I shall. President Donnelly.
Here.
Vice President Griffith.
Here.
Secretary Hanser, present. Treasurer Bailey.
Here.
Trustee D'Alessandro.
Here.
Trustee Foster.
Here.
Trustee Schaefer. Here.
Thank you very much. Everyone is present. There are no changes to the board agenda. We move on to the consent agenda. The minutes for January 11th. And would someone like to put that motion on the floor? Eric?
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there support? Mary, support? Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Board of Education matters in your packet, as well as in an email that you received earlier this week, or possibly at the end of last week. The Loft program wants to go on a field trip, and they are looking for our permission to let them do that. I believe it's Echo Grove that they're going to be going to. It's a way for them to get away and talk about things that they've experienced, and so someone want to put this motion on the floor and we can discuss it if necessary. Heather?
Move to approve the Loft program field trip to Echo Grove on January 25th to the 27th, 2022 as requested.
Thank you very much. Is there support? Eric, support? Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Jill's not here, but she provided a safety report. What I guess I'd want the community to know is that we've worked hard since our last meeting to be able to get language and wording that we needed. This is the beginning of that. This is, by the way, board members, this is just an introduction to what's going to be a much larger presentation that she's going to do on Tuesday, all right? But she asked that this would be read publicly, and so Mary, if you would read this for her.
Certainly. January 20, 2022 Safety Report. Our current school safety policies at Oxford Community Schools have strong and effective tools to promote safety so we can swiftly respond to threats or concerning behavior in accordance with state laws. We have a number of safety policies and guidelines, including Policy 8400, also known as School Safety Information, Policy 8410A, which lists our early warning signs of possible school violence, and Policy 8410B, which is identifying and responding to imminent warning signs. These guidelines, tools, and other relative policies can be found on our district website by clicking the Board Policies link under the Board of Education section of the District tab. These policies give us the latitude to engage mental health experts, parents, and law enforcement as deemed appropriate or necessary. This team approach to problem solving and promoting safety is right in our policies. Our entire team continues to remain vigilant as we support our students' return to school. We are grateful for our school resource officers, other law enforcement, and our private security firm who continue to support us in keeping students and staff safe in our buildings. I will be giving a safety update during our Tuesday, January 25th meeting and will further explain some of our safety policies and procedures. Respectfully submitted, Jill Lamont.
Thank you very much, Mary. So it's time, we're on item number 5, time to move into closed session. And would someone like to put that motion? Yes, Heather.
Move to meet in closed session pursuant to the Open Meetings Act, Section 8F, to review the specific contents of employment applications and applications submitted by individuals seeking appointment to public office in a confidential manner.
Is there support for this motion? Chad? Discussion? Seeing none, roll call, everyone. Welcome back. Thank you for your patience. 8:15, and we will come out of closed session and enter into open session. John, do I lead this part or do you?
Well, I can start us out, as we had
Very good.
discussed.
Very good.
We'll go around the table. You've had a chance now to review all of the application materials you've received, hear about each of the folks who had applied for the position. We'll ask each of you now one at a time just to express by letter designation who it is that you would like to include in first round interviews. I'll keep a tally of who has shown interest in which candidates. Once all 7 of you have had the opportunity to share that, I'll read it back to you so you can see where there's already kind of built-in consensus, and then we can go forward with the motion. Okay, so
Very good.
if you would like to start in typical roll call.
Yeah, so Mary, our roll call vote
So we want to go in that
order?
in that order?
Yeah.
So that the roll call vote is listed differently than the attendance.
Yeah.
That's fine. Go
Is that
through
correct?
the go through
Okay.
the roll call and just however that order is.
Okay. I'm sorry?
Like how you did for closed session,
Okay,
that order.
that's what I wanted to verify. I'm new at this. Thank you, Ms. Schaefer, for your
Doing
support.
very good.
Thank you. And Ms. Schaefer, you are first on the list.
I would like to consider candidates A, B, C, D, and F.
Thank you.
Next, Mary.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. D'Alessandro.
I'd like to consider candidates F, D,
I'm sorry, was that B?
D,
D, thank you.
as in Dan, G, C, and B.
Thank you.
Mr. Foster.
Candidates C and D.
I am next. I would like to interview candidates A, B, C, and D. Mr. Bailey?
I would like to look at candidates B, C, D, and F.
Mr. Griffith?
I'd like to talk to candidates B, C, D, F, and G.
Mr. Donnelly?
A, B, C, D.
All right. So, 6 of you express support for candidates B, C, and D. 4 for candidate F. 3 for candidate A. 2 for candidate G. approach it at this point is there were 4 candidates, or 4 or more of you who already expressed support, those being candidates B, C, D, and F.
So now as a board, can we have,
You can put a motion on the table,
Oh, so- okay,
and
so
then
we can-
it'd be open for discussion.
okay. So you're giving us the results of our vote, and now anybody can choose to make a motion for any of those, or quite frankly, for any.
That's true. You're not mandated to make any particular
Right.
type of motion.
But we know now that, if you could please make that statement again, that there were at least 4
B, C, D, and F.
Yes,
that voted for those. Okay.
correct. Candidate A was the only other one who was close to that. Candidate A had 3.
I'll make a motion. I move to interview candidates B, C, D, and F.
Is there a second? Chad, second. Discussion. Oh, sorry, Heather?
So, John, is this the point where if we feel that there's an additional candidate that we want to talk about without being specific and giving up their,
It's 2 p.m. back there.
we would do that now?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to discuss candidate A.
Can I interrupt you guys just for a minute? I'm sorry. John, will you confirm the letters again for me, please?
B, C, D, and F.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Sorry, Heather.
I'd like to discuss adding candidate A to this list. I think in reviewing this person's specific experience, this particular candidate has a lot of negotiation skills, which is something that we need to keep on the forefront. The beginning part of the application, it talked about that under this person's most recent experience, so that jumped right out at me. This person also talked a lot about building relationships. Building relationships. This person specifically mentioned not only staff, but students and family and community. And I remember that being on the forefront of what we were looking for in a candidate. We were looking for somebody that could not only build, but cultivate relationships. And I think especially in our current situation, we really need to have somebody that feels that that is a strong suit of their personality. And this person specifically mentioned it under their accomplishments that they felt and their qualifications in themselves. So I think that also jumped out at me. They met all of this person also met all of the qualifications for education and has a pretty extensive experience record as well, without saying too much and giving anything away.
Chad?
Thanks, Tom. Heather, thank you. And I say that because as I'm sitting here questioning, right, just debating in my own mind what candidate A was on my list.
Yeah.
And anyway, I will throw my support on A.
Any of us have any comments? Yes, sir.
Having looked a second time at the amount of negotiation And being that we've got contracts coming up this year, I do think we need somebody good, strong in negotiations. So yeah, I would support that one as well.
So,
Adding A.
all right, so Heather, thank you. And Corey and Chad, given the fact that you did not use A the first time, that would, I think, John, take us to 5 for A now.
It would.
So I would seek an amendment to add A to our already list of B, C, D, and F. Heather?
Make a motion?
Yeah, to amend and add A.
Okay. Move to approve to make an amendment to the previously read
You to amend the original motion.
the original motion. Okay, sorry. So I don't
By
say
adding
move to.
candidate A.
What's that?
So I don't need to say move to? Or I
No,
should-
you do, because we have to get it
Yeah, you do.
supported.
Okay, move to amend the previous motion that included interviewing candidates B, C, D, F, and the amendment would read to include candidates A as in apple, B as in boy, C as in cow, D as in door, F as in Frank.
And is there a second to that? Chad, second? Discussion.
So before we move on, so if I have a comment on one of the candidates that is in that amendment, should I say that now?
No, we'll do that second. So if you're not opposed to adding A, then let us get this A added, and then you can bring up the next issue that we would like to discuss. Is that fair?
Sure.
All right, so anyone else on the addition or of A? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. We're adding A to the, so now it's A, B, C, D, F. And Eric, your thoughts?
So I guess just in general, I think one of the candidates that we mentioned in that motion should not be there. So if this is the right time to speak up, then I'll go ahead and say that.
It's fair,
Okay.
just be careful.
So, yeah, so I think candidate B does not have enough experience that the other candidates have. So I suggest not having that candidate be on the interview list, because they're just clearly not even near where the other candidates are on that list.
Okay, thank you. There are,
And I think, and I think, again, let me just remind a little bit.
Yes.
So I think in this case, the experiences of the other candidates just far outweigh the experience of this person. So I don't want to waste, frankly, their time or our time. That experience is not there. So,
okay. So do you want to put that in a amended motion to see if it gets a second and some discussion?
sure. Move to remove candidate B from the interview list.
All right, is there a second to that motion? Chad seconds. Discussion. I think if I recall properly, 6 of us had that one on our list. So it would take 3 of you to agree with Eric and take that individual off of the list. So this is a chance to discuss candidate B and whether you agree with Eric on his concern of experience predominantly. Anyone? All right, no discussion. We do have a motion and a second. So all in favor of removing B, candidate B, from our list of interviewers or interviewees, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay.
Nays carry. We are back to A, B, C, D, and F. Any other discussion?
I don't know how you support and then not, you support them, if we shouldn't even have the motion if the person supporting it didn't favor.
That's where I was,
Yeah.
It just dies there.
Supported so we could have the discussion.
You
Right.
don't, yeah, but if there's no support, you don't even have the discussion.
Yeah, if you don't get a second on a motion, the motion dies.
No, I
Yeah.
get that,
But,
but we can't have a discussion without,
no, the motion dies, you don't even get to the discussion portion of it, so that just so we understand that
no, agreed.
if you're not
Agreed.
willing to vote for said candidate, as we go through this process, just don't second a motion, because then it doesn't linger.
Right, but if you second it because you want to hear more discussion because you're considering it, then you would still second it. So you could have discussion.
I guess.
Okay.
It just, you either feel one way or you don't. But there again, that's just my thought.
All right, any other discussion? We have narrowed it down to A, B, C, D, F. Any other discussion about these candidates being on or off, or any others? All right, seeing none, it looks like we have a solid list, and I believe that that was voted upon before the attempt of a second amendment, which failed.
Well,
But you still have to,
Oh, yeah, because we got to come out of the amendment to an,
yeah,
okay.
right.
So,
you pass the amendment, you have not passed the actual.
who made the
motion.
original,
I made an original motion.
Right.
so, would you please make the motion again, adding A to that list? Correct, we came out of an amendment, now we have to solidify it.
We have to have a whole new, I mean, I
You don't need
can,
to have a whole
but
new motion.
I
It's
did-
amended.
I did say a new motion.
So we just have to vote?
We just have to
Yes,
vote.
I
All right
already said
then.
the motion.
but I thought we already voted on.
I guess we voted on the amendment, not the overall approval.
Correct.
So we got to back out of the amendment and go back to the original.
Right, you voted to change the motion,
Right.
amendment, but you
Correct.
haven't
Hence, we
voted
got to
on
go back to the
on
original motion.
So you got to vote on the original.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to vote on the original, the motion as it has been amended. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
nay.
Motion carries.
All right, so, if I may, I'll go ahead and we can read aloud what it is that you selected to interview. Maybe we can go on and complete the business of discussing first-round interviews and make sure we're ready to roll.
Yes.
There. All right, so the individuals that have been selected to interview include Todd Bidlack, who's currently the Assistant Superintendent of Learning Services in Bloomfield Hills Schools. John Bernia, who's the Chief Academic Officer of Warren Consolidated Schools. Jill Lamond, Assistant Superintendent of Student Services in Oxford Community Schools. David Pass, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, Oxford Community Schools. Kenneth Weaver, Deputy Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, Oxford Community Schools. Those 5 individuals have been selected to participate in first-round interviews. So once my portion of the meeting is over, I will immediately be contacting those 5 individuals to let them know and get them out of the interview schedule, and then we'll be sharing that with Angela, so that can be posted.
And Angela, what is the calendar date for that particular meeting?
January 31st, February 1st, February 2nd.
All right, thank you.
So if we can jump into that, let's talk about the
Please.
interviews, right? So we do have 31st, that's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 31st, and then February 1st and 2nd. You had determined already you wanted to start those at 6:30. We schedule those interviews to go up to 90 minutes. They're capped at 90 minutes. They don't have to, and sometimes don't last quite that long, but we don't let them exceed 90. So if the candidate is risking running out of time, I'm watching the time. I'll be prompting the board president to interject and let the candidate know we've got, for example, 20 minutes left. We still have 7 questions. We're going to get through all the questions. You're going to need to pick up the pace of your responses, something like that. Right? So I presume, you tell me though, that you would want to schedule a break in between. We typically will use like a 10-minute break, but you can make it shorter, longer, whatever works for you. What would you prefer?
I think a 10-minute break's fine.
Okay. So the first interview each night would be at 6:30, and then roughly the second one would be starting at 8:10. Rather than a hard schedule and posting it that way, what we'll normally say is the first one starts at 6:30. When the first one ends, the board will take a 10-minute break, and then the second one will begin. I have the second candidate ready to come in early enough that if the first interview ends in less than 90 minutes, you can take a 10-minute break, come back, that candidate will be present and ready to start, so that you're not just kind of sitting around and waiting. All right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then you'll have, obviously, on the third night, just one candidate to interview. You're scheduled then to come back on Thursday, February 3rd, to narrow the field down to finalists, which gives you a little bit of time to walk away. Consider everything that you have seen and heard, which will include them, by the way. Since these interviews are public, we have feedback forms. We'll provide them, that we will have available for any audience members who are present. They can watch and hear the interviews too. They're able to provide written feedback, which basically includes what impressed you about this candidate, what concerned you, if anything, about this candidate, and are there some questions that you still have about this person. We collect all of those. We make 7 copies of each of those forms and place those in your hands so that you can take those with you and consider the feedback of the people who were present and watching the interviews as you deliberate and make your decisions. So the other thing is, candidates virtually always, not 100% of the time, but most of the time, will come to the interview with additional materials. You have their application, resume, and cover letter. Very often they'll bring you something more. So you'll have the original application materials to reflect on, the additional materials they will have given you, your own interview notes, and I'll be presenting you with binders that will have a lot of space for you to keep notes. I encourage you to take a lot of notes, because it's easy once you get through 5 interviews now and get to the end of it to start to forget who said what. That would be helpful to you, so you'll have those to review as well as the feedback forms. You'll have quite a bit of data to consider in preparation to come back then on February 3rd and make a decision about who you'd like to reduce the field down to. The ideal number, I would say, is 2 finalists out of the 5. But again, does it have to be 2? No. I think I just gave you the example of another district that just recently interviewed 3, right? It happens sometimes. And if you can't differentiate, I would put it this way. If in your mind, after interviewing those 5, if 3 of them are neck and neck, or even if you see one as being maybe ahead, but the next 2 are so close, and you'd still like to hear more, you could interview 3. We have to amend the schedule because all of we have interviews scheduled for 2 nights. We'd have to add a 3rd, which we could do. What if there's only 1? It's not ideal. Put all your eggs in one basket after the first round. But if there's only one you have interest left in and everybody else is far behind and there's no way that you're really, in your mind, they should be considered any further, could you move forward with one? You could, right? So much like we just did, there's no absolute number, and we follow the same kind of a process. We go around and give each of you the chance to say, by name now, obviously, because people know who was interviewing, here's who I'd like to advance as finalists. And in this case, I encourage you to say a little bit more and speak to why. We don't ever talk about why we don't want somebody this way. Once now that all of these names are public, you don't ever go down that path. So you want to avoid, like crazy, saying anything about why you may not want to advance somebody. But by all means, if you say, here are the 2 people I'd like to advance, it could be helpful to your colleagues as they consider where they want to go, that they hear your thinking as to why that might be. And then we have those interviews scheduled for February 16th and 17th. The difference on those days is, and the reason we separate them, we only have one interview for you each day, and we started those later at 7 o'clock. And what you may recall from previous discussion is it's a long day for the candidates. The candidates are in your district relatively early on that day. We bring them in, we set up a schedule for various groups of stakeholders to come in and have the chance to meet each of the finalists on separate days, have the chance to ask questions of them. There's some interaction. I would be there too, facilitating this. I'd be handing, as people walk in, a feedback form. And my introductory remarks, I'm telling them that we ask board members not to be present, so that if your presence is not intimidating in any way. But what I'm telling folks who are there is, you're not there for that reason, but because you're not there, this is only helpful to you, the decision makers, if they provide feedback. And normally, they do. People don't walk out of there until they hand me back that form. We collect them. Again, we make copies of all of those for each of you, and you have that much more additional information to consider as you wrestle with the big decision that you're going to be facing. So, very long day for the candidates. We give them a little bit of a break for dinner, and then bring it back to 7 o'clock with you. We recommend, but it doesn't have to be this way, that our second round interviews, the questions themselves, we don't ask quite as many questions, and we schedule about an hour for that. But we recommend that you start with a presentation on a topic of your choosing. So I'll give you the example of the most recent search I did with another district. They asked a question surrounding the third grade reading law. Right, it could be anything. So each candidate then would be prepped to come in at the start of their time with you. They would begin with a presentation, and we normally say, it could be different here, but we normally say time that to be around 15 minutes. I'll tell you in advance, they struggle with that. If you want to say 20, it almost always is going over. But what we do is we say, you've got 75 minutes from start to finish. So we're timing this, right? And we say it can't exceed 75. I've had boards, if I'm not explicit about this, get nervous if they see the candidate is past 15 and now it's 16, 18, 20, looking at me like, are you going to stop them or not? I'm not going to stop them. What I tell the candidates is that you've got 75 minutes. If you take longer than 15 for the presentation, you're going to start eating into the time you have to answer interview questions. If you take less, you're going to have a little bit more time to answer questions, but you've got a total of 75. Again, you can modify that in any way you see fit, or I have had a couple of boards who say, we don't feel like we need the presentation, let's just go with the interview. That's fine too. That's your decision to make. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that now, but.
And that would be at the finalist selection. So when we select the finalists, we would also make that decision whether there's going to be a presentation or none, and what the presentation would be regarding.
Yes, you wouldn't have to decide that right now. But fairly shortly thereafter, we're going to have to make a decision. You will, and we'll get into that. I'm getting a little bit ahead of us.
Okay.
About second round interview questions, and if you do want to have a presentation, what's the prompt? What do you want the presentation to be on? You'll learn a lot in terms of the content that they're speaking to, because it's a longer period of time, and you learn about their public speaking style that way too. You get a little bit of that from answering interview questions, but it's still different if they're here, PowerPoint and presenting. And the way I put it to them is it really, though, you're the kind of the key audience for them, but they need to be thinking that they've got audience members here too who are also going to be assessing and giving you feedback, so really be thinking about presenting to everybody who's present. All right, and then you're going to have some time. You're not going to end that week with a decision. That happens on February 16th and 17th. The following week, the week of February 25th, or 21st rather, remember that we talked about site visits, where a subcommittee of the board, no more than 3 members, goes to the work site of each of the finalists. Even if it's an internal candidate, we do this. We want to have an equivalent experience. The candidates make the arrangements for usually about a 3.5-hour period of time for various stakeholder groups to be present, to meet with those 3 board members. You can ask questions that you're going to have at that point. Great opportunity to ask if there's still lingering questions or uncertainties about any of the candidates. That's a great time to ask the people they work for and with what they think. Board feedback on those has been really positive, and they say that it's been very helpful. in terms of their decision-making. So once those 3 board members, it's ideal if it's the same 3 board members going to both of those. We ask that those 3 board members then reach consensus, kind of draft a communication to the other 4 board members that is not, try to stay away from being terribly judgmental. You're not making a recommendation on who the other 4 should vote for. It's as factual as you can possibly make it. Here's what we saw and heard on this site visit, here's what we saw and heard on the other. Provide that summary to the other 4 board members so they can consider it too. And then you're scheduled to come back together on Friday, March 4th to make your selection of your next superintendent. And again, we try to be very consistent with this. Each of you would have the chance one at a time to say, here's who I would like to name as our next superintendent and here's why. Sometimes it's great and it happens that all 7 of you are naming the same person. Nice when it works out that way, but it doesn't always. If 5 of you, let's say, name one of the finalists, 2 name the other, that's fine. But again, it's pretty obvious where consensus lies. You would make a motion, you would second, and then you would vote. What I recommend to you, but you don't, I'm not mandating, of course, you can do whatever you want when you vote. What we recommend is that once you've had the chance to publicly say and be clear and honest, here's the person I prefer, but that you see that the majority of the board supports the other finalists, we recommend that when it gets down to a vote in support of the motion, that all 7 of you vote yes. Because given that it's a bit of a foregone conclusion at that point, it's just a nice signal to send to your new superintendent and the community that, hey, I may not have, that may have not have been the way that I would have gone with this. But at this point, if that's the way the board is going, I'm going to get solidly behind this, and we're going to, all of us support this person going forward as our new governance team for Oxford schools. But again, that's a recommendation. If you, in clear conscience, can't do that, that's up to you. Then it's just contract negotiation. If you haven't already, you're going to want to think about reaching out to your legal counsel, start getting a draft contract ready. Even if you have some blanks, obviously name being one, but the others being the compensation pieces, because you're going to want to see the level of experience that the new person brings and then determine where do we want to place them in terms of salary and other benefits. Then you're going to be prepared to quickly plug those in and then give a draft of that contract to the person you selected to begin the negotiation process. So once negotiations are completed, you would formally take action to hire the new superintendent. And according to the timeline, we're hoping that the new person would be ready to start as early as Monday, March 28th. That all make sense? All right. Here's what the only other thing I'd like to do today and ask you to do. If you recall, I sent you via email a copy of sample first round interview questions. So in your binders under tab 4, you're going to find those same questions that I sent to you.
Yeah, Angela came about it.
Of course she did.
She's on top of things.
Of course. So, and again, we're not going to read the questions a lot, but they're numbered, they're by category. The way this will look, by the way, so you'll see there's going to be, and I'll present this to you. There'll be a little script for the board president to read opening each of the interviews, the same script. The board president gets the first 3 opening questions. Then there's 6 other categories under which we have questions. Each of you would be assigned a category. If you have a strong preference, you can express it. If somebody says, I'm a finance guy, I want to ask the finance questions, you could, but you're really just asking questions, and anybody could ask from any category in reality, right? So I can either randomly assign those, or you can tell me if you have a strong preference. But what we need to do tonight is the goal is to look at grabbing 3 questions from each category. But also, if you feel like it happens sometimes, where there's 4 questions in this category we love, right? We can do that. We don't want to exceed in total 24 questions. So if it's 3 from each category, we're going to be at 21. If we need to go over in a couple of categories, we'll be okay to do so. We just can't do that in every category. So if I can ask then, having had the chance to review them, let's just look one category at a time. When you look at district relations, opening questions, there's only 3 there, right? District relations, there's 4 questions. The question would be, which one would you like to eliminate? A simpler way, when there's only 4, is process of elimination. if any?
I make a suggestion.
Sure.
I'm not necessarily 100% married to it, but just from a quick glance, maybe number 3?
I would agree.
I was thinking the same thing. I think that'll come out in other places.
I think, yeah, I was just thinking that that's kind of probably going to end up coming out almost in answering kind of 2 and 4.
Yeah.
Sure.
I felt like that would come out.
So 1, 2, and 4?
1, 2, and
1,
4.
2, and 4.
Okay. Same for political awareness. More questions, one that you see as being kind of the weak link of the group.
I would want to hear answers on 1, 3, and 4. So I guess I would remove 2.
Others, what do you think?
I would probably remove 3 if I had to pick.
Okay. So you like 2? You'd like to keep 2?
Over 3.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's
it's
good.
3 to me is, let's say, less important than
Okay.
the other.
All right. 2 people in favor of removing 3. What are the rest of you?
I was thinking of removing 4. So just to throw one wrench in there, but I'm not connected to any of them. I mean, I'm okay.
Okay.
And I'm okay with removing 3 as well.
Anybody opposed to removing 3? No. Question 3 goes. Leadership attributes, there's 5 there, so we would need to eliminate 2. But again, I'm going to go back, because suppose there were 4 you feel really strongly about, we could accommodate that.
I was going to say, that to me is an area that, especially in our current situation, that we really need a strong leader to kind of move our ship. So that might be an area that 4 might be, that might be an area where we can extend that one, you know, like you
Sure.
said, we have a little wiggle room.
Sure.
Maybe number 4.
The other ones are very, I think it's less important.
Okay, so you're feeling 4 would be the one, if 1 has to go. Okay.
I would consider removing 1 because I think it might be redundant. I think that in answering other questions, we would be able to see that.
I would agree with that, Mary.
Two of you identified 1 of you identified 4.
I can go with that.
You can support 1.
Yeah.
Anybody opposed to removing 1? Okay, so if we remove 1, we will keep the other 4.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tyler made a really good point.
Instruction and curriculum, I'm going to flip this a little bit because there's so many questions. Rather than saying which ones do you want to eliminate, let's go with which ones do you want to keep. And again, in this case, pretty arguably instruction and curriculum is very important too. If you want to go with 4, we could do that. I don't think you want to go past that, but. So which ones there do you think are most critical?
I like number 4.
I think 4 is important too. I like that question.
That can be pretty revealing.
Yeah.
I like 4 as well. I think 1 and 2 is a very similar question, asked in a different way.
I like 6.
So maybe we could,
6 is good too.
So, there's some very
Well,
support. Go ahead.
If we're going to say 6, then I think 5 is important too, right? So
4, 5, and 6? Or 3 of them? Is that what you're saying?
I like 5. Yeah, 4, 5, and 6, I think is what
And then either 1 or 2, you said? Heather?
I'm sorry, I meant 1 or 3.
1 or 3.
They
Okay.
were talking about kind of giving examples. One says give examples, one says tell us your best and worst. It's similar.
I like 3.
yeah.
So if we were to go with 3, 4, 5, and 6, any strong opposition? to
I'm not
that?
opposed to that.
I think
No.
that sounds good.
Dan, you're quiet.
Good.
All right, finances, 4 questions. Let's look to eliminate one of those 4.
I definitely like question 4. That would be a top question I would not want to remove. The other ones, I feel like are almost answered in 4.
Number 3 could be interesting. I think that'd be good.
Yeah, I mean, you really have to think hard on come up with a creative response to something like that, especially for somebody who's never had that kind of experience.
Right.
So maybe 1, 3, and 4, get a feel for village bonds and sinking funds.
Yeah.
I think that's good.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
What about 2? I'd like to know what their experience is with making a tough decision. If they have to cut something.
Budgets and stuff.
Because you already know 3 of our candidates position what they've done on renewals, bond proposals, sinking funds. We've already seen that from 3 of them.
You think you get enough for the resume?
And I think
I'm okay with 2,
the other
3, and
one
4.
was, it was right there, $200 million. I mean, it was right in there. I mean, if,
I'm not opposed to 2, 3, and 4.
Okay.
Solely.
Yeah. Okay.
All right,
2, 3, and 4
do
is.
that.
And then staff and personnel. Is there one that you'd be comfortable eliminating?
I think number 3 is really important.
I like number 3, but I don't know if this would be under finance or staff, but I'd like to dig into their negotiation skills. How do you be fair but hold the unions to feet to the fire?
Okay. Would your colleagues agree I should draft a question like that?
Say
Say that
again,
again.
Corey?
Yeah, I don't get the fire thing.
I would like to know their negotiation skills and how they have had experience negotiating, being fair, but yet keeping their feet to the fire, meaning not just giving them everything they want. I mean, let's be honest. We have over the last few years, if we have to make some tough negotiations, what do they bring to the table?
All right, makes sense.
So kind of like a give us an example
Yeah.
of involvement in a union negotiation where a tough but successful outcome was
Yes.
derived?
Do we want to narrow it to union?
No, it can be just negotiations in general.
And here's what I'll do, by the way. So once, I'll be preparing these to have ready for you, but I'll also send them to you in advance, at least just, you'll have 5 sets of questions. So you can write notes for each of them, right? And they'll look identical if they're changing names, but I'll send you kind of one set at least. So once it's all together, you'll be familiar with the format. You'll see where your name is and know which questions you're going to be asking. So if you see what I've drafted for that one and you think I've missed the mark a little bit and you want to suggest that it's modified, I would invite you to go ahead and let me know that. I want to make sure it meets your needs.
Okay.
I'm okay with letting number 2 go.
So
Yeah, 'cause I-
eliminating 2?
I think we could, I think one's important.
So I'm hearing support to keep 1, add the question we discussed, and then we want to have 1 more.
Does anybody feel number 2 is important?
I mean, I'm okay to take 2
I
off.
think it'll work its way into 1. I think 1 kind of pulls,
Mhm.
although 1 specifically says administrators, anybody in the team, they might refer to something else.
I could live with getting rid of number 3.
Ooh, I like that. I want to add number 3. It's important. I think we need to, especially given what you were just saying, we got an important thing coming up. We want to know what their impression is.
Couldn't that be in part of that question?
Yeah, it could.
Because if somebody favors,
So could I could. I mean, I could, I'll have to think about making sure it's not too much of a monster of a question, but I can look to incorporate 3 into
Court's question.
That's
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll work.
I think I would like to know what this person's impression is of themselves through other people's eyes.
Mhm.
That is what is important to me for that question. So if it could be incorporated somehow.
So I can take a stab at that. So we would have question 1, 4, and then the new question that incorporates question 3 as part of it.
Is that right?
That sounds reasonable.
Okay.
So kind of keep them all a little bit?
All but
All but 2.
2.
2.
Okay.
Okay. So as I said, I'll get a draft of those ready. I'll get it to you and give you a chance to become familiar with, but also to provide feedback if you have any. There'll be enough time for me to tweak it before I go off and print them and bind them and get them ready for you. So when you show up for the interviews, I'll be putting those binders in front of you. You'll have them. And you'll either need to leave them for Angela, put your name on them, and she can have them back in front of you when you come back the next night. Or if you want to keep them with you, you just have to remember to bring it back.
So we'll give them to Angela.
Whatever works for you. I get people say, nope, I'm not giving these up. These are my notes. I want them in my possession. That's fine. You just have to remember to bring them back. Not a big thing.
Can I just ask a question? I was just curious, in setting these questions up for a lot of different districts and different positions. I recruited for a long time back in my professional life, and I'm wondering, in looking at that question, how would the president of your teachers union describe you? Have you ever asked that in a, give me a one-word answer?
No. Good.
I just thought I'd throw that out there. I used to use that a lot. It's interesting to see if people really only had one word, what they come up with.
And then maybe let them
As opposed
explain,
to a big,
but
long, 2-minute thing where you kind of almost don't get the answer.
Where that could be helpful too is my challenge would be making that a part of the question that we talked about drafting and making sure it's not too big.
Right.
So that would make it a little more manageable too. if The
I
rest
just
of
thought
you are fine
I
with
just thought I'd
that.
ask that.
I kind of like it.
I liked what Eric said too.
Well, if you want
What
with
is your view of yourself?
if you go with a one-word
somebody else
answer,
to use.
then you can add it in there, because it's one word.
Exactly, right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. It's interesting if you think about that, even to answer about your own self, if you just were
hard
able
to
to
say
use one
one
word,
thing,
what would
yeah.
you use?
Yeah, that's, I like
It's
it.
kind of telling to, especially about self-assessment, I think.
yeah.
I like it.
Just thought I'd throw it out there.
Okay,
All
so.
one word, we'd be done in 15 minutes.
So just real quickly, and I don't want to belabor this, I know you've got a little bit more business to take care of, but you'll see the next sheet is the public comment sheet that we have out here, and we would use for those stakeholder meetings too, right? So you see what it looks like. You can begin now, I'm not going to ask you to make any decisions now, we're going to have time, but I'm going to have to ask for your input too, going forward on second interview questions, and you see not only sample second interview questions, but behind that, you see a menu of potential interview questions that includes a lot. In the second rounds, you can go just about any direction you want to. Bear in mind, you will have learned enough about the 2 finalists that you want the second round questions to really get to the things you think is most important you need to know to differentiate between those 2 and make sure you've got the right person. So you're going to have a lot more choices here. And I'm going to also tell you, you're not limited to these choices. And maybe there's a question or 2 specific to Oxford that you want to ask that, of course, you're not going to find here. We even give you the latitude in the second round. If you want 1 or 2 of the questions even to be specific to the finalists themselves, you can do it, but it's got to be equitable in that if you ask one candidate a question that's specific to him or her, then you have to ask the other one a question specific to him or her, and then have an equal number of other questions that are the same. If there's 2 for one, you have to ask 2 of the other, and then have all the rest be the same. So I'm telling you this now because you can start looking at this stuff and start thinking about it in advance. We don't have to make those decisions now. And then the other thing to start thinking about, what would be that prompt if you decide you do want a presentation? What would you like them to present? And what would you find to be informative and helpful?
Be the same topic for each candidate.
Yes, it would. Yes, exactly the same. All right. It's an awful lot to take in on one night, I know. It is. But, you know, the biggest thing is I don't want there to be any surprises, any uncertainty. So I invite you to ask any other questions you have at the moment.
First of all, appreciate how you took us through the journey, so thank you very much. Take me to the end. I think I have a mental picture of how everything works. We get to the finalists and we're going to be writing up a contract, right? So I deal with legal counsel and they've done them, right?
Yes.
So they're drafting it with blanks in it.
Yeah.
Do we go into closed session to all decide what goes in the spaces and then come out? I mean, tell me how that works.
You could, and I may be a little rusty on this, but my understanding is if the attorney provides you with a letter providing some guidance, and you can go into closed session to discuss attorney-client communication.
Correct.
Right.
Right, okay, okay.
But that has to be that has to be why you're going in, because
Correct.
of the attorney-client, not for...
That's my understanding.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay, all right.
And, you know, if you're going to be consulting with your attorney to get something drafted,
Yes.
I would certainly ask the attorney too. What's the appropriate way to approach this so that we can go into closed session?
That'll be my question.
Right,
Yeah.
and discuss it.
Okay, and are you wanting now us to remove from our booklets the individuals that are not in the selection?
Yes, you're going to keep Bernia, Lamont, Cass, Weaver, and Bidlack in your binders. Pull the rest out, and then you also get your spreadsheets back for you too. Thank you for remembering that. So I will do that, and then if there's nothing else, I will get that back out of
Spreadsheet
your way.
is in,
That one,
to this
yes.
table.
Yeah, I'll come around. and-
This one. These notes, he needs those back. You'll have to transpose them. So that's
Throw it
those.
on the wrong sheet.
So we should have 5.
Yeah, so just, you know, everybody go back through and make sure you have the right ones.
I will collect those, and I'm going to close myself up from this room, and I'm going to call those 5 individuals and let them know. So that you know, and again, I've communicated this to the others, anybody who doesn't get a phone call tonight will get an email from me tomorrow, even though they will know because they didn't get a phone call what occurred. But they should get some kind of formal communication from us, so I will be doing that tomorrow with all the others.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much
So much.
for your work so far and filming.
You're welcome.
These are returned to
Of course,
you.
if you have any questions along the way, I want to know, I'll be happy to answer them. No surprises, no uncertainty, we want this to go.
And homework for the board.
I can get it, I can reach
Just throwing things out.
I also want this.
Guess they can throw a hand warmer out.
I'm cold everywhere.
All right. All right, good work tonight, folks, I appreciate it.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And board members, thank you. Great job.
I've counted 4 times, I'm just, I think that's right. There we go. What's that?
It's all up to you now.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Well, good. We are on our agenda on line 7, unscheduled audience participation. And given the fact that media is the only people in the room,
Any
board
cards,
members, we
Angela?
don't have it.
Okay.
We don't have any unscheduled audience participation today.
We're recorded right now.
That's all right. It's good. It's good. All right. Moving on. Scheduled activities. You'll see those there. Flipping over to clarifications. Tim's not here. I don't have any clarifications. Does anyone else? Final board comments.
I have a short comment.
Please.
Maybe. I want to say thank you to my fellow board members for our work tonight and the work that I know we can do moving forward. There's a lot to think about and important decisions to make, and it's just as important for us to come together. I don't want to say come together, but remain together in support of our administration through what they're doing now, as well as what we'll be doing moving forward. We are responsible for setting up the next superintendent for success in this district. And I'm really proud of the work that we've done so far, and we have a lot of questions to ask and a lot of digging to do. And I do not take this lightly, and I know we don't. I just want to remember that it's really important, that we're supporting the next superintendent, whoever that is going to be, and we provide those tools for them. Also, looking forward to our high schoolers getting back in their building next week. High school administration, I know, has done a great job with the open houses for our students and working with the community in a way that's beneficial to everybody, and listening to the community and the parents and families on their needs. And I trust that will continue as it has. So I'm excited about them getting back in the building and excited about them coming back to school. That's it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Corey?
I know I joked about it earlier, but congratulations on your new appointment. I know you got a lot going on, so to add one more role to represent our district, it's appreciated.
Thank you. I'm excited.
Thank you, Corey. Anyone else? All right. Anything under other?
I took the opportunity to reach out to a firm for us to take a look at as we move forward, and for who we're deciding to look at. This firm is very impressive.
You're
talking about for the third-party review, right, Dan?
If I was on this board, if I was a community member, if I wasn't on this board and I was a community member, looking at the credentials, I don't think anybody could argue with these people. So it's going to be a difficult decision for us moving forward, but we need to start that process at some point.
Thank you for looking into that. Does Angela have
I
that?
have it right here.
All right, because probably what we want to do is we probably are going to get one or two other names of third-party companies is to have that distributed so that we can all see it, right? Because it's an option that Dan has researched and looked at, and we should probably add it to the list of.
Do we have a list yet?
I don't know of anybody that has added to the list yet, except that we have some things that have been obviously spoken from Michigan type people who want to be a part of something like that.
I think this decision is a board decision. I don't believe it falls in any other body's purview. I don't see that it would be.
I agree. I
something-
think there's a conflict of interest to have it,
Anybody
to have
else.
the decision be anybody else's.
No, it's our decision, but there were people that like have suggested that they would like to be part of it for a third-party review, right? And so that's my only point. Of course, it's our decision.
Could you just clarify too, for the public, I mean, they might not be sitting here, but they'll be watching this, what exactly is the third party going to look into?
The third party is going to look systemically at the whole issue. It's going to not just look at what prosecutors and sheriffs have looked at. It's not just looking at Oxford. It is looking systemically at our social emotional type things from a state level. Are agencies talking to each other? Could you, if they were talking to each other, could you have known more things about a child because maybe some agency knew something but another one didn't, and what if they communicated? What if we realized that state funds need to supply more counselors and more whatever? It's kind of like tearing the whole thing down from a state level all the way down to the district and saying, what are pieces and what pieces could have helped, what pieces are hindering, what pieces are getting in the way. And so you have input coming from sociologists, educators, police officers. You're going to have a lot of different people from many facets involved in that process. So it's way beyond just looking at what took place inside the high school.
Can I make a comment?
Yeah, please.
And I may be off base here, but I think that the public, meaning our community, our parents, I think that they think, again, I'm speaking on people, I guess, on their behalf, I think our community thinks that our third-party review is going to just be reviewing the events leading up to and on November 30th.
So you're saying that's how you think a lot of the community sees it?
That's how I think, yes, that's what I think the expectation is. That's what I think that they think that we said, sort of, kind of, or like that just it was alluded to. Not that we even meant to do that, but just in saying a third-party review. I feel.
I think that's included.
the
It's just,
perception is out there.
I think that's absolutely included. It's not that, but I think to say that it's just that is not meeting what other third parties have done in other places.
Okay.
Right? Let me give you an example that just I dreamt of.
Okay.
Is that does Child Protective Services have a database that a counselor can look at, that as they have someone in their office, maybe we don't have any history, maybe there's things that we don't have, but if that person could go to a state database or a county database and go, there's been 6 visits in the last 2 years, would that affect change in how they would move in that room, in that counseling section. What about other agencies, right? Because if we're wanting to look at the whole child, then there are other agencies that may be involved. How many times have the police stopped at that house?
Right.
Right? Or this house or that house. So what you're doing is trying to say, how much input could we get from other places that could help us deal with someone before something happens, find it and catch it and work with it, enlighten us in the moment to maybe act differently and go forward. So I don't want anyone to think that the third party is not a reevaluation of what happened. It is, and more.
And more.
It is, and more.
Just so that, I think we want to...
Yeah, please, community, it is, and more.
Yep. I think if we continue to communicate that effectively, then when it's done and it's presented, you know, we don't have people saying, that was a waste of money, and, you know.
Yeah, we do have to be clear.
A waste of time and a waste of resources and a waste of money. It isn't, because like you said, there is a lot more going on, right, than just maybe what happened in this building or another building or whatever, with whatever child. So, just...
Yeah, so all board members, if we can help reiterate that, right? It's not that it's not a re-looking at it from an independent source. It is allowing them to do that and roll out as deep and as far as you need to see if we could communicate better, to find kids, help them sooner, right? Get to know more about them. Yes?
I just wanted to just review the resolution too, and that it does, that what we agreed on was that the third-party review will bring together all of the facts of what happened before, during, and after, and beyond the criminal investigation into systemic factors that were at play leading up to. Mm-hmm. So that's exactly what we're talking about, and then and that is what our resolution said, is that we're going to look at all of those things.
Correct.
So that
Correct.
is,
thank you.
and that we are, and then it's for us to determine the full scope.
Yeah, and I think it's important that we reiterate that. Dan?
So how I view this, and I could be on an island here, but how I view this is, obviously we want to find out what we just talked about, what happened up until the 30th, and what happened thereafter. But how I look at it is one very simple thing. I don't want to be sending an email like we receive from other school districts and other board members from school districts, and tell them how sorry we are and we're here for you and all that. I guess my thought process is whoever we hire needs to do the things we talked about earlier. This needs to be the model of what public schools in America use. Not just Oxford, not just those in Oakland County, not just in the state of Michigan, but in the entire country, what needs to be done to stop the tragedies from happening. So we're not here to put a Band-Aid on this. We're here to stop it. Sew it up, stop it, so it doesn't happen again. And whatever that finding is, let's you know, we talk about being leaders, right? This is what we talk about. This is what we want in this position to be our next superintendent. Somebody that's going to effectively bring about change. We have to do the same thing. We can't worry about all the other things. This we can worry about. This is our mission moving forward as a board. So I think whoever we select, it needs to be somebody that's willing to put forth that effort.
Agreed. Yes, Chad?
Yeah, well said. I think as we're talking to the community, I think the other piece to this that we need to remind folks is that this is not going to be a fast process. This review is not going to be brief. We're looking at months probably that it's going to take.
I would agree with that. I would agree. All right, Dan, thank you so much for doing that, and let's get that out to all of us. That gives us a picture of what this firm is offering us, right? It gives us a first look at seeing something like that, but absolutely, we get to make the decision of how that's going to happen and who's going to do that on behalf of us, right? All right, anybody else under other? I'd like to get your some thoughts from you, just so that we can get ahead of ourselves. Given your work schedules and those kinds of things, I'd like to know 3 people that would like to be involved in site visits, the subcommittee that's going to go to the sites, and I want to get your impression or your feelings about the presentation that one would do. I like the idea of a presentation because it gives us a snapshot of what it'd be like to hear that person provide a presentation, right? So in general, do you agree with that as board members?
I like the presentation.
So I'm going to keep that one up. How about the site visits? 3 individuals, no more, that would be able to go visit.
I might be able to.
So Heather,
Does it have to be one specific date? Did we already have a date?
It's the week of,
I think
sometime
it's a
during the
few
week of
days.
February
Okay.
21st through the 25th.
I think it's within this week.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Heather would like to be on. Who else? Corey's willing to be on. Who else? Mary's, okay. Is that all right? That's 3?
Somebody else.
Is that okay? Okay.
Don't wanna take
So there we
anybody
go.
else's
So we're going to do the presentation, and the 3 individuals going on the site visits are Heather, Corey, and Mary. So I got that done. I will get with our attorney and just begin to talk to him about drafting the contract, and since he also is an expert in the bylaws and everything, I'll ask him about how to get us into a closed session so that we can talk about that at the appropriate time. And I don't think I have anything else under other. So everybody's good? Good? All right. 9:26, and we're going to call the meeting adjourned. It's a great day to be up. Wildcat. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
The 2